Here are the two most important components to determining our value as pilots to Southwest Airlines. The two components are, as you can see on the bottom there, the average gauge per flight, and on the top, the stage length per flight, and that's measured in statute miles. Well, I've already talked about how fleet modernization has allowed our gauge to grow, but let me focus a little bit more on the top and how our business model has affected our average stage length. Our small, scrappy Texas airline, as it expanded, just organically, the average stage length per flight started to grow. But it wasn't until Mr. Kelly's strategic initiative with the purchase of AirTran that we started to focus on the long-haul market. As you can see, year over year over year, continually setting new highs on stage length. And I've been watching this for a while, and I noticed in 2016 going into 2017, you can see there it started to dip. That kind of got my curiosity up a little bit. Again, a nerd alert. The first and second quarters of 2017, that number was actually going up. We were up to 766, so the normal increase in stage length. And then in the third quarter, it went back down to 760 on the report. And then finally for the full year, that dipped to 754 as shown there. And I thought, that's interesting. And then I remember, oh, that's right. The end of the third quarter is when we got rid of the final group of classic fleet. That was about a little over 30 aircraft, I believe. And remember, the classics at that time were serving the short haul market. So when all of those aircraft all at once at the end of the third quarter went away, we had to backfill and pull some of our next gens that were serving longer haul markets. We had to pull those off to backfill the short haul market. So I expect that to be just a temporary blip. And by the third quarter of 2018, I expect to see a measured growth in the statute miles again. You can see because of Mr. Kelly's fleet modernization and changes in business model, both our gauge and stage also indicate a significant amount of growth. Well, what that means to us is you multiply those two together, and our average ASMs per flight have significantly increased as a result of Gary's strategic initiatives. Now, one available seat mile is one seat moving across the sky 1 mile. That is the widget that you and I produce for the company. Now, we don't sell the widgets, we just produce the widgets. It's Mr. Kelly's job to make sure that there's bodies in those seats and they're paying customers, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But I want you to take a look at this chart because this is empirical evidence that Gary's strategic initiatives have made what we do even more valuable, because every time we go out and fly, we are producing more widgets for the company, and that's a great thing. As it turns out, ASMs are what the industry calls capacity, and capacity defines our work product to the company. And you can see over the last 15 years, that's increased 51%, but the majority of that growth happened at the outset of Mr. Kelly's strategic initiatives. Think back to what I've just gone over about how all the different forms of growth put together. You can see we're carrying more paying passengers now as a result of bigger airplanes that flying longer distances. Look at the amount of revenue growth that we have, 151% revenue growth over 15 years per flight. That's an amazing amount. So capacity defines our work product, and revenue defines the value of that product. And that is a huge scoreboard for you and I. And that is an exclamation point when it comes to negotiations. This is no longer Herb's Airline. We're not flying under the same network or the same equipment, and we're producing an incredible amount for the company now. All right, so now let's return to the macro level again. And I think you've got the picture and enough information now to understand how Mr. Kelly turned us around and what has caused all that record revenue. So what we're going to do now is take a look at the annually reported numbers. And this is the first. The capacity growth has grown for the last 15 years, 114.2%. And this is the annual production of ASMs over the years. And you can see that that's significantly grown despite having basically a flat fleet during that period of time. This is a very interesting nerd alert on this one. In 2012, actually, we were producing more flights per day than we ever have in the history of Southwest Airlines. And you can see that produced 128 billion ASMs. Well, even though we flew fewer flights, just a little bit under the 2012's number, but in 2017, we flew fewer flights, but we produced 25 billion more ASMs. And again, that is direct evidence of the success of Gary's strategic initiatives. Additionally, as we changed our business model, you can see that resulted in a huge increase in the number of revenue passengers that we're carrying each year, now up to 130 million passengers a year. Now you put those two together, and now instead of just talking about empty seats moving across the sky, now you talk about revenue passenger miles. That's one paying passenger traveling across the sky, 1 mile, and the industry calls that traffic. You can see that our traffic growth is up 169.3% over 15 years. And that, my friends, is how Mr. Kelly has produced record revenues while keeping a flat fleet. So my hat's off to Mr. Kelly, because the strategic initiatives, that transition away from adolescence into adulthood, he's created a revenue machine, and that going forward means you and I are going to be producing an extraordinary amount of economic wealth. We talked about how Mr. Kelly managed to increase and continue on a record revenue path with a flat fleet. And some of you might be saying, yeah, but he's increased our unit revenues as well. So let me overlay unit revenues, which is something that we're going to talk about in a future episode. But you can see there that each one of those widgets that we produce in 2017, each widget was valued by Mr. Kelly at 13.76 cents, producing $21.1 billion. But you can see over the strategic initiatives, although we had a blip in 2014, for the most part, our unit revenues have been flat. And I can guarantee you that Mr. Kelly and his smart guys are working on ways to increase unit revenues going forward. And remember, that's what Mr. Kelly's strategic initiative is all about. It's creating that launch pad for increasing revenues in the future. So what does the Southwest earnings reports have to say about the future? Well, I'm glad you asked. It provides quite a bit of information. And this is the part I want you to carry away the most, because this is important stuff. As I said, Gary's strategic initiatives, bringing on the MAX 8 in 2017, was not the end. It's just the beginning. He laid the foundation going forward. And here's what they say in the earnings reports. First of all, it gives us a very specific amount of aircraft and types of aircraft, as well as retiring 10 aircraft per year. That's a new addition. You can see the net results of that. We are going the next 5 years, we're going to grow by 142 aircraft. That's net growth planned right now, and that includes retiring 40 next gens. And you can see there that that's a fleet growth in 5 years of 20.1%. That's a wonderful thing. But now you do the math and you calculate out that we're bringing on bigger MAX 8 aircraft, and that's going to continue that gauge growth trend by 3.8%. And then further, you can see that, our fleet growth is 20.1%, but that means a seat growth of 24.6% as we bring on those bigger aircraft. What we do is going to continue to increase in value, both in work product terms, but also in work value terms. Why is that important? Because all of this is about Contract 2020. And as they say, we're not skating to where the puck is, we're skating to where the puck is going in the future. And it's important to know that what you and I do will continue to increase in value over time. You say, well, how much value? If you do a little bit of math based on just net growth, instead of 114,000 ASMs per flight, and up to 120,000 ASMs. So our capacity will continue to grow, and the value, if we just do the math and maintain a flat unit revenue of 13.76% per flight, the value of what we'll do will still increase by $1,000 per flight. I expect that actually to go up, because I know that Mr. Kelly and his boys are working on ways to increase unit revenues as well. Moving on. These are the things I want you to take away from episode 1. We are more productive now than we have ever been at Southwest Airlines. We're producing more capacity per flight, and each flight we're producing more revenue, and that is going to continue in the future. So what you and I do will continue to increase in value out towards Contract 2020 and beyond. And I want to leave you with this. The reason we get paid more than your next door neighbor is because what we do produces an extraordinary amount of economic value. Well, I'll leave you with this thought right here. The company will not offer more than the lowest price we are willing to accept. And I tell you, I think fundamentally you need to know your value before you can evaluate any company offer. So if we can raise our level of awareness of our true value to the company, that's going to help our negotiators because now they know we're standing behind them with higher expectations. Well, that's it. That's all I've got for episode 1. I really do appreciate you staying with me this long, and I hope that you got some value out of it, and I hope you come back for episode 2 in the future. Again, thank you very much.